I think if the first and the second press conference were 10-8 rounds, this was probably another 10-8 round in favour of Eubank Junior. He's obviously going to have um, the upper hand when it comes to talking and when it comes to these interviews and press conference situations. It's the thing he does best, in my opinion. He's so good at getting under people's skin and creating the conversation around him, even in cases previously where there's been bigger topics to be talked about. Chris Eubank Jr. has quite often been top of the list, and he is getting under CONOR Benn's skin. I think there's very little doubt about that. They're very different characters, polar opposites, you would have to say, and the way he's speaking calmly and composed, and he's maintained that pretty much throughout the whole build up so far. Whereas the aggressive nature, the fiery nature from CONOR Benn is exactly as it was in the original fight all those years ago. Now it's what, 2.5 years since the first fight was signed, and we had the press conference and led up to fight week. But one thing that sort of hit me during the interview came from Piers Morgan. Really, he seemed to be siding, in my opinion, quite close with CONOR Benn, particularly on the positive test related topics. He was quite defensive of CONOR Benn during those conversations and quite accusatory towards Chris Eubank Jr., which I was surprised with just from a journalistic point of view. And I expected Piers Morgan, being the experienced journalist he is, to be completely down the middle in such a situation and ask the questions and maybe not offer his opinion quite so much and listen to what the fighters had to say. There's quite so many times where Eubank Jr. was speaking and Morgan managed to sort of nestle his way into the conversation, interrupt Eubank Jr. and steer the conversation in a different direction. So I would have liked to have seen him been a bit more down the middle and hear what we needed to hear from Eubank Jr. But from what we can take from the conversations into fight week in 5 weeks' time, the advantage from those conversations firmly lands in Chris Eubank Jr.'s side of the court for me.
Yeah, just on that, I thought that Piers was quite. I don't know. I think from my point of view, and look, Piers is more experienced than I am for sure. But I think like the flow of conversations probably just have been left to Eubank Jr. and CONOR Benn and minimal kind of, I guess, control. But Piers seemed to really want to stress the timeline of things and kind of walk through the timeline before Eubank Jr. Would interrupt him and try to get to whatever the main point was of it. I thought that you're right in what you were saying as to maybe the kind of the feeling that he was a little bit more on Ben's side than Eubank Jr. In my opinion. But I did think he did well to get the concession out of Ben. It's a small concession, but it's a concession that I guess I can't remember seeing in an interview, any interview, including myself, be able to get out of Ben that he accepted or didn't accept, but he kind of accepted the fact that they were in his system, but couldn't accept as to how they got in his system. And just that little small step of saying that they were in his system, I don't remember anyone kind of getting that out of CONOR Benn. It's not what we wanted to hear out of CONOR Benn for sure. We want to hear the reasons as to that. And Eubank Jr. in amongst all the build-up for this fight is still stressing the fact that he wants to know as to why they were in his system. But Piers couldn't get that out of him either. Eubank Jr. hasn't been able to. But it's not been avoided either. That conversation has not been avoided. I think it's not been handled the best either by CONOR Benn too, because I think it was asked in that interview about obviously the drug situation and the clomiphene, and CONOR Benn's responses to either get kind of threatening to kind of get a little bit aggressive about it and then say it's none of your business. Well, it kind of is Eubank Jr.'s business because he's the one that's fighting you. But I guess his argument would be that it's what's the word here? It's his own kind of information. If he wants to release that information, that's up to him. It's of his free will and not anyone else's. So I guess there are two sides to it, but as a boxing fan, as someone who once has kind of followed Conor Benn and seen him rise, and really appreciate his rise after the back of the fights with Cedric Payno. Do you want to kind of know as to if it was all on the up and up, I guess, is the best way. But he is, bottom line, I guess, cleared to fight and cleared to have this fight with Eubank Jr. The British Boxing Board of Control. The anticipation is from both Eddie Hearn and Ben Shalom that there won't be any problems as to having him licensed by the British Boxing Board of Control. That is still not confirmed as of yet, but we'll find that out in the coming days, I'm sure. Let's talk to some other guys in the chat as well too and get their contributions once again. Here we go. So I love when Ben threatens Piers. Did he say what you looking at, Piers? I think Piers caught some strays. Big Chungus found it hilarious. Just Boss says, LMAO, laughing my ass off. That is, Ben needs anger management therapy. Peter Porter comes back and says, the egg slap has won all pre-fight talk. Eubank did him there. Josh, do you agree here, though? Look, I thought Eddie in the last few weeks as well, and he's right about this, and it does need to be said too, that as much as maybe a lot of people feel that Eubank Jr. delivered a bit of social justice, if they want to say it that way, in this hitting Conor Benn with the egg, it's also the fact of the matter is someone who bought a foreign object and hit their opponent with it at a face-off, and it shouldn't have happened. And this 100 grand fine, however grand it might be, is probably deserved off the back of what Eubank Jr. did to Conor Benn.
Yeah, I think the fine is probably deserved. Just if you take Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. out of the situation and you insert what happened to the top of any other big fight, whether it be over here in the UK or anywhere else, if a fighter slaps another fighter with an egg, then there has to be some consequences to it. I think people are looking at it very differently because of the current situation and the situation over the last 3 years or so with between Ben and Eubank, and particularly involving Conor Benn. And people are looking at it differently. People have strong opinions over both of those characters. You are one or the other when it comes to who you like and dislike, very Marmite characters. And I think that plays a lot into people's thinkings around whether slapping someone with an egg was the right thing to do, or whether it deserves such a harsh punishment. But I think if you look at it objectively and you look at a fighter slapping another fighter with a foreign object, there has to be a harsh fine. I think the board have probably done the right thing by deterring other fighters from following down the same route. We've seen since the emergence of Misfits, there's been an awful lot of how do you even put it? Craziness. That's not really the right word, but all the things we've seen.
KSI then did slap Dennis with the pancake. Was it the day after or a few short days after?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know who's going to impose any fines on KSI for that. I can't imagine he will be getting fined for that. But I think it sets a bad example and it sets a bad precedent if you don't fine Eubank Jr. for doing something like that, because we don't want to be seeing that on a weekly or a monthly basis in the boxing circles. So for me, £100,000 isn't probably that much to Eubank Jr., but it's got to be making a statement and fining him. So for me, the right call.
It's a weird line to walk, because the truth of it, and if we're being, let me steal a cliche from us YouTube boxing media members, if we're being brutally honest about all this, Eubank Jr. hits Conor Benn with an egg, gets fined £100,000 for it. But the truth of the matter is, him hitting him with the egg caused such a stir and a fuss that it's blew up the views and blew up the spotlight, made it burn brighter. And it's probably going to contribute to more sales of tickets and pay-per-views. But Eubank Jr. is going to be down 100 grand, even though they're all benefiting from the fact that he slapped him with the egg. Very weird kind of line to walk, even the costs and the benefits to all those involved. Let's jump back into the chat here from you guys. We have here Craig the Monkman offers, I was more of a Ben fan, but now I'm more swaying towards Eubank. Ben wouldn't admit the question, though, would he? I think that's in reference to the allegations. Stephen says Piers Morgan was absolutely rattled by Chris Eubank. How good is Eubank, by the way? Great talker, impressive. Conor Egg is embarrassing. Yeah, I think in amongst all the shouting and amongst the slurs and swear words and whatever it is in boxing press conferences, Eubank Jr., I've said this before, is from the school of Jake the Snake Roberts, where he's not the loudest man in the room, but he's almost sometimes the most quietest and succinct man in the room. But you listen and you're drawn in on every word because you know something good is going to come out of his mouth. So he's done really well to separate his own kind of talking identity with his words. What else have we got here? So just lose the chat again here.